They are sending us the insane. This allegation, laced with fear and exclusion, has echoed through history, cloaking itself in different guises for different eras. Whether ancient Rome's portrayal of barbarian hordes, 19th century America's demonization of Irish and Italian immigrants, or modern rhetoric about asylum seekers, societies have repeatedly framed outsiders as threats to stability, morality, and even sanity. Yet beneath these anxieties lies a deeper, more insidious question. Who defines sanity, and who decides who belongs? This accusation does not arise from reality, but from a self-reinforcing cycle of fear, misrepresentation, and control. By examining the historical fears of the outsider, the intersection of migration and mental health, and the manipulation of public perception, we uncover how these forces work together to perpetuate the myth of the unfit migrant. This cycle is not merely about exclusion, it is about defining who holds the power to decide who belongs. Understanding its roots and mechanisms reveals that the real question is not about the sanity of migrants, but about whether societies will choose fear and exclusion or empathy and justice as the guiding principles of their future. The fear of outsiders is a recurring theme throughout history. In ancient Rome, barbarians were portrayed as existential threats, not only to Roman security but to its cultural identity. While the decline of the empire stemmed from internal dysfunctions, the narrative of barbarian invasions persisted, projecting Rome's fragility onto external groups. This fear established a template for later societies to use migration as a scapegoat for internal strife. In 19th century America, fears of Irish, Italian, and Eastern European immigrants were similarly framed through pseudo-scientific theories like phrenology and social Darwinism. These ideas provided a veneer of legitimacy for labeling entire ethnic groups as mentally unfit. Policies such as the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 further illustrated how fears of outsiders, fueled by media and political rhetoric, translated into restrictive laws. Immigrants were depicted as carriers of disease, moral corruption, or mental instability, conveniently reinforcing national identity by casting outsiders as threats. This pattern persisted into the 20th century and beyond. Refugees fleeing communist regimes during the Cold War were often seen as potential radicals, their trauma framed as evidence of susceptibility to ideological instability. More recently, anxieties surrounding asylum seekers from Africa and the Middle East have revived these narratives, portraying them as socially or psychologically dangerous. These historical fears resurface in every era, perpetuating a view of migrants as inherently other. Migrants carry both the weight of their journeys and the psychological scars left by the circumstances that drove them to flee. Displacement, war, and economic desperation impose significant mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. Upon arrival, cultural alienation and systemic barriers can exacerbate these struggles. Yet host societies often misinterpret such challenges, pathologizing migrants as unstable rather than recognizing their trauma. Historically, this misrepresentation has been stark. At Ellis Island, superficial mental screenings labeled exhausted or disoriented migrants as mental defectives, denying them entry based on flawed assumptions. These practices weaponized mental health as a justification for exclusion, ignoring the broader context of the migrants' experiences. Today, similar stigmatization persists. Refugees showing signs of post-traumatic stress are often characterized as unpredictable or dangerous. Their mental health struggles sensationalized rather than understood. This misrepresentation creates a harmful feedback loop. Migrants' mental health challenges, rooted in the trauma of displacement, are used to reinforce fears of instability. Instead of offering empathy or addressing the systemic causes of migration, host societies view mental health struggles as further evidence of the outsider's unfitness. This stigmatization does not arise spontaneously. It is shaped by political and media narratives. Demagogues exploit fears of outsiders to rally public support for exclusionary policies, using labels like insane or dangerous to dehumanize entire groups. Adolf Hitler's use of eugenics rhetoric, for example, painted Jewish refugees as a threat to Germany's national health. Modern populist leaders employ similar tactics, amplifying fears by highlighting isolated incidents of migrant violence or erratic behavior while ignoring systemic causes. The media plays a key role in this cycle. Sensationalist coverage amplifies fear by focusing on rare and extreme cases, reinforcing stereotypes of migrants as unstable or dangerous. This selective framing not only distorts public perception but also drowns out narratives of resilience, courage, and humanity. Those in power, whether political leaders, economic elites, or media moguls, benefit from these portrayals, using them to justify restrictive policies, maintain marginalized labor pools, and profit from fear-driven sensationalism. The relationship between historical fears, mental health, and perception forms a self-sustaining cycle. Historical fears of the outsider create a predisposition to interpret migrants' mental health struggles as evidence of inherent instability. These struggles, when misrepresented by media and political narratives, shape public perception, reinforcing long-standing fears. The cycle repeats as sensationalized perceptions revitalize historical anxieties, creating fertile ground for exclusionary policies. For instance, the caricatures of Irish immigrants as drunken and unstable in the 19th century tapped into earlier fears of unfit outsiders while simultaneously shaping future public opinion. The portrayal of asylum seekers in the 2010s as culturally incompatible or psychologically threatening echoed similar narratives. In each case, fear, perception, and stigma fed into one another, ensuring that exclusion remained a socially accepted response. At the heart of this cycle is not concern for public safety or societal stability, but the desire for control. Labeling outsiders as insane or dangerous consolidates power by creating convenient scapegoats, diverting attention from systemic issues such as inequality, war, and climate change. This fear-mongering allows those in power to enforce policies that exclude and divide while avoiding accountability for the root causes of migration. Breaking this cycle requires shifting the narrative from fear to empathy. Migrant struggles must be understood as a consequence of global inequalities and conflicts rather than as personal failings or inherent traits. Policies should prioritize support and integration rather than exclusion, recognizing the shared humanity that binds us all. The notion that they are sending us the insane is not a reflection of reality, but a myth perpetuated by a cycle of fear, misrepresentation, and manipulation. This cycle feeds off historical anxieties, weaponizes trauma, and shapes perceptions to justify exclusionary practices. To dismantle it, societies must confront the deeper truths. Migrants are not threats, but survivors of a world shaped by systemic injustices. The real question is not whether they are sending us the insane, but whether we will allow fear to dictate our future, or embrace justice and empathy as guiding principles. By breaking this cycle, we not only recognize the resilience of migrants, but also reaffirm the values of humanity and inclusion.